presume this refers to the Creel power station, which is one of our older power stations in our fleet. Unfortunately, it was built 40 years ago or so when the emission standards were not as stringent as they are at the moment. From Eskom's point of view, we certainly support clean air, low emissions, and that everyone agrees. We totally agree with the NGOs and Earthlife in particular that that is where we need to get to. But it is going to take time to retrofit Creel with the necessary technologies to get to the new emission modern standards that are in place. And for this reason, we're asking for a variation of our license at the Creel power station in order that we get an opportunity to bring it in line.
When is this going to take place, though, Andrew? Because my understanding is Medupi is not online as yet, and you're only hoping, as Eskom, to fall in line with the standards in the year 2027. It's a long way away. How are you going to try and fast-track this whole process? I mean, that's a good decade and a bit away from now.
Certainly, Medupi will be in line with the standards. So again, at the Creel power station, that retrofit would take place between 2018 and 2023 at a cost of about 7 billion rand. So it is a major, substantial modification to the plant, which will be certainly undertaken, and we're committed to do that. So on new power stations, of course, we can build these measures in from the word go, but retrofitting is a very expensive and time-consuming business.
But between now and then, I'm sure you'll admit, because these submissions and these emission standards aren't being kept to, people's health is in danger for at least the next 4 or 5 years, according to what the numbers you're giving me. What are you going to try and do to communicate with those communities?
Just to explain the situation, Creel has had a generation license, obviously, for the duration of its life, and it has complied with the standards. The conditions of the new license are slightly different, and this is where we've raised concerns with the relevant authorities, in that unlike the previous license conditions, which looked at a cumulative amount of emissions, the current license conditions look at every specific point in time on a continuous basis for an overall limit. So to put it practically, for 90% of the time, the power station, the Creel power station, does comply with the limits. But unfortunately, if a lot of bad coal comes through, for example, for a few minutes, those emission standards might be briefly exceeded, and that's what this is about. So we don't believe that cumulatively the emission limits are beyond the air standards. It really is about how the measurements are actually taken, and this is where, at a technical level, we're engaged with the relevant authorities, and we believe that we'll strike a balance.
All right, Andrew, we wait to see what that balance is that will be struck. For the moment, thank you very much. Andrew Etzinger, spokesperson for Eskom. Let's go from Eskom now, get the other side of the fence, if you will. I'm joined by Dominique Doyle from Earthlife. You heard Eskom referring to the NGO. It's one of those opposing this. Dominique, good to have you with us. You heard what Andrew Etzinger had to say. Is 2018 good enough?
Well, first of all, today marked the end day for submissions on Eskom's application for postponing its minimum emission standards for 14 of its power stations. So it wasn't just for Creel, and it was a group of NGOs. It wasn't just Earthlife Africa. It was Groundwork from Durban, our lawyers in Cape Town, the Centre for Environmental Rights, and Earthlife Africa.
How are you going to now oppose this? Eskom is obviously going to seek its legal wranglings on how it can get this right for the submission to go ahead. How are you going to try and stop them?
Well, for all of those power stations that have applied for a postponement, and first of all, this wasn't postponement. They'd firstly applied for total exemption from meeting the minimum emission standards. So in our submissions, we've shown that there are several problems with Eskom's modelling, and that there are several problems with Eskom's air quality monitoring for all of its power stations. And this goes for sulfur dioxide, particulate matter, all of those gases that the minimum emission standards are trying to control.
It's quite a mouthful to get right a few times in an interview. When it comes to dealing with this problem, though, has Eskom ever tried to engage with you? Will you be engaging with Eskom at any stage? Does this have to go as far as the legal route?
Yes, we think it does, and if the Department of Environmental Affairs doesn't take a stand on this, we will go to the Constitutional Court. We have tried to engage with Eskom on numerous occasions. There is an Eskom NGO forum in which we try to engage with Eskom on these issues. Unfortunately, though, the first workshop has been postponed as well.
Just as a final comment then from you, I asked Andrew Etzinger how are they going to engage with communities that are affected. A final brief answer from you if you could. How is Earthlife and the other NGOs going to try and at least stop the problem, or at least suspend the problem of earth pollution in those areas? What's the quick fix?
That Eskom retrofit their power plants with the correct technology, and those power plants that are too old are decommissioned immediately.
Know more about your world.
eNCA.com